Hello again, everybody, and welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show alongside Andrew Simonson. I'm Alec Etheridge, and we're here at Pelham High School this week. Going to host our game of the week as the Pelham Panthers host the Helena Huskies in a huge rivalry showdown, and a little bit more on the line this week after what we saw a week ago from these two teams, and we'll talk just a little bit more about that here in just a second. But another busy week as we hit the third week of region play. Next week, going to get a break from region action, so an important week here for teams to continue that momentum or gain some momentum as they head into a non-region week next week. And Andrew, like I just said, we're through 2 weeks already. We've got one more week of region play. We've had a chance to kind of see some of these teams grow. Well, we're going to talk about two of them right now that really early on struggled a lot early this season. That's Briarwood and Shelby County, but now we've seen them bounce back. Briarwood 2-0 in region play. Shelby County bounces back, gets their first win last week in region play. Both of those teams going to be on a bye this week, so we want to touch on them here in the intro. But what impressed you the most about those two teams at this point to be able to bounce back the way that they did last week?
Definitely. I've had a chance to watch both teams this season so far, and Briarwood last week as well. So just really seeing that turnaround from Briarwood last week was so encouraging. They looked like a very complete team. We obviously knew what the defense could do. We saw that even in their opening couple of games against big opponents. But to see that come together against Pelham last week, a very good quality opponent, a playoff opponent in 6A, was absolutely phenomenal. Their defense made all the adjustments that they needed to in the second half to go out and succeed in that game, limiting the deep ball and just being able to make the big plays when it really counted the most. And overall, really gelling as an offense as well. I really liked what I saw out of Josh Thompson, as well as some of the receivers as well. I just really enjoyed watching this Briarwood team, and I could not be more surprised or happy to see Briarwood at 2-0 in the region right now.
And stay tuned for the end of the show for SCR Stars of the Week segment. I'm sure you're going to hear a couple of those Briarwood names mentioned. But Shelby County also, I mean, Briarwood picks up a huge win. They're 2-0 in region play, which we were just talking about off air, is one of our bigger surprises right now. Just the quick turn that they took. But for Shelby County to get that must-win game against Jemison, a rivalry matchup, and they come out and they play well. The offense gets some positive, but the defense made some big plays as well. So what's that do for them and their chances moving forward too?
I think for Shelby County, it just gives them the confidence that they know now that they can go out and win the way that they need to. We saw a very balanced and dynamic attack last week. Bradley Horton coming in the running back spot, seeing some of those numbers that made him a two-way all-county player last year, and Ryan Sipes also continued to settle in with the passing game as well. But it's that defense week after week that just continues to impress me with the Shelby County Wildcats. And if they're going to succeed this year, that's going to be the bedrock of what they're going to do, and then the offense is going to follow after that.
Yeah, and I've got one player who's going to be listed defensively from the Wildcats here at the end of the show as well. So a couple teams not playing this week in Briarwood and Shelby County that are going to have some players mention our SCR Stars of the Week segment, but also that have taken that next step that they needed to take heading into the rest of the season. Like I said, this week off. Next week they're going to get a break from region play, and then it's right back at it as both those teams going to be looking to chase down a playoff spot. But Andrew, those two not playing this week, that doesn't detract from a week that's going to be one of the best of the season. We've got a Thursday night game of the week. We've got a Friday night game of the week in our huge rivalry showdown right here at Pelham High School. So we've got a lot to get to. We've got 9 total games taking place this week. We're going to break them all down on this week's Shelby County High School Football Show. And of course, at the end of the show, like I've said several times, going to name our SCR Stars of the Week. So make sure you stay tuned. We're going to jump right in with our game of the week right here at Pelham High School. To me, this is one of the biggest rivalries in the state of Alabama when it comes to high school football. It's been fun to see that progression over the last almost 10 years now as these two schools split off, or one school split off into two schools now. And you look at what happened in this game last year, a back and forth game. It really looked like it should have been Pelham's game for the taking, and ultimately Helena wins that football game on their home field. So you know coming into this year, Andrew, that Pelham was already going to be upset. They're already going to be angry, looking for revenge back on their home field this season. And then you see what happens last week. A team that expected to win a region championship, I think, this year at Pelham, and they played well at times a week ago against Briarwood, but ultimately they lose that game, and they just couldn't get enough going offensively, which is crazy to see, to talk about, because you look at the numbers, and Clayton Maines had another big game, but average-wise, this team's been right around 21 points per game so far this season. Now they enter off of a loss after that bounce back 0-2 start last year, 2-0 start this year. They had all that confidence go into a bye week, and then they come out and they lose their region opener. Now they're 0-1 in region play. Helena's sitting here 4-0 overall, 2-0 in region play. So you know Pelham, let's talk about that first. The motivation, the hunger that they have, and just the anger that they're going to try to let out on this field against their biggest rival on Friday night.
Definitely, and I don't really think that there's a reason to panic too much for Pelham just from seeing them last week. We saw some big explosive plays, especially from Clayton Maines to CJ Tolber and Brock Isbell as well. So you know that the passing game is going well, and then obviously with Pelham, the run game is going to follow that as well and just kind of establish that along the way. I think what really made the difference in the second half of that game was Briarwood's adjustments to some of the big plays that Pelham was beating them with, and some of the key stops that they were able to make on fourth down as well. So I think this Pelham team is going to be just fine. I think that it's like you said, they're going to use last week as motivation and last year as motivation. I had the pleasure of watching Helena Pelham last year, and it was just such a gritty performance from Helena as they just really powered their way to an overtime win, and to just continue that strong start to the season that we saw from them last year. And this year they're starting to a similarly hot stretch as well, just coming in with a high-flying 4-0 record, but this will be their biggest test of the season. You could argue they've maybe benefited from a bit of a lighter schedule, thanks to some of the teams that they play, coming off of a little bit of a disappointment to start off the season, but nonetheless, they've completely impressed at every single turn along the way, and just seeing Helena's passing game evolve with Carson Acker, the run game especially continue to be solid, especially as we saw last week with both Jordan Washington and Jeremy Spratling, both kind of operating as that two-headed monster that we saw in the Chelsea opener, and then that defense just continuing to be well. I think that defense especially is going to be key in this game, just because, like we saw last week, Briarwood was able to really crack down on them using a good pass defense and a good run defense. And I think that Helena has the weapons to get that done as well this week.
Yeah, and I think you look at this game, it's such a big region matchup for these two teams, but in particular Pelham. If Pelham wants to win a region championship this year, they've almost got to win this football game, because if you fall to 0-2 in region play, that puts a lot of pressure on you the rest of the way, and they've still got Ben Russell on the schedule as well, and some difficult matchups ahead. So a lot more emphasis and must-win kind of attitude, I think, going to be there for Pelham this week. But on that Helena side, this is a team that has been as dominant as any so far this season in the 6A classification, just from a physicality standpoint. There's a lot of athleticism in 6A, maybe the most difficult classification across the state. But you look at the physicality that Helena plays with. Jordan Washington, a big physical running back. Jeremy Spratling, who's come in twice now this season and had big games as a backup. And then you look at Carson Acker and his arm and his physicality at the quarterback position, Hunter Hill at the receiver position in the return game, another physical presence that they've got on the offensive side of the football. When you're used to this team being more of a ground and pound team and then being physical defensively, we're seeing a lot of that physicality on the offensive side as well, and more from just the running game this year. And I think that's what makes them so dangerous, the fact that they are balanced offensively, and then they can rely on their defense as well. It's a defense that's given up 17 or less in all 4 games so far this season, an average of 12 points per game. And to me, that's the biggest storyline. You look at the way that Helena's defense is playing so far this season, and then you take into account the Pelham offense that's scoring about 22 points per game right now. And they've been a consistent team, Pelham has, scoring about 22, giving up about 18, which tells you that they're going to be about that same line in every game, and every game's going to be a close battle, including this one. I think this will be a close contest, but at the end of the day, this is a tough defense that Pelham offense is going to have to find a way to do something else to get some traction there.
Definitely. This is going to be Pelham's toughest test on from an offensive standpoint. Tackling on this Helena defense has looked so impressive throughout this year. So what they're going to need to do is they're obviously going to need to establish both sides of the game and just really take the fight early to Helena. We were able to see last week that Pelham was able to catch Briarwood off guard with some of those big passing plays and just really try to establish that tone early and just try to demoralize them. Especially in a big rivalry game like this, winning those emotional and mental battles is obviously just one key part to getting a win, but it could be one of the most important parts as well. I think that the more that Pelham tries to come out early, take the fight to this Helena defense, I think the better off they could be in this game.
Well, so you look at that, you look at the redemption factor coming off a loss last week. Is that going to be enough to get Pelham over the hump and pick up a win here on their home field?
Just based off of what I've seen so far, I really go back and forth between this pick just because I know that both of these teams are so well matched. They know each other so well. The rivalry and the emotion is there. This is going to be an incredible football game. Right, this pick could change later in this week, but I just give a slight edge to Helena just because they're obviously coming off the win. They have so much momentum going forward. They have all the keys on the offense and defense. I think that it will come down to the wire, but I think that just that edge that Helena has, I think that they're going to be able to get that in this win.
Yeah, you look at what this team's done so far in Helena and the fact that they're outscoring opponents 173-48 on the season so far, 43.3 points per game offensively, giving up 12 points per game defensively. I think they have a slight edge just from the balance standpoint. That's what it is to me. You look at the balance that they have with the two running backs. They've got two receivers and a quarterback who can throw the ball, which is something this team hasn't really had in several years. And now being able to add that different dimension in there with a physical defense, I think ultimately makes the difference, but it's going to be close. This is always a good rivalry battle. It's always going to be a tight game, and it's going to be a physical football game too, which is what I like to see. I'm sure it's what you like to see as well. So you look at that, the physical defensive presence that you're going to get from both, and then in the trenches, Clayton Mange running the football from a quarterback position doesn't act like a quarterback. He is a guy that will seek out contact and run through you, and Jordan Washington going to be the same way at the running back position for Helena. So it's going to be a fun physical battle between these two, and I wouldn't be shocked if it does get into overtime again this year or if it's going down to the wire in the fourth quarter. But at the end of the day, I do think that balance that Helena's been able to establish on the offensive side of the football is going to be what ultimately makes the difference. It's going to be a fun one, though, between these two teams, as it always is. Right now, we're planning for both of us to be here covering that one with live tweets, video coverage, and everything, so we can have story photos and video after that game. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun out here at Pelham High School this Friday night. In addition to that big game between Helena and Pelham, we've also got a Thursday night game that's going to be a game of the week as well for Thursday, as the Vincent Yellow Jackets going to hit the road to take on BB Comer. And Andrew, I know this is a game that you and I have been looking forward to a lot in the off season, just based on what happened in this game a year ago. These are going to be two of the best teams again this year. They were two of the best teams last year, and ultimately it was the difference maker in the region championship. Vincent ends up losing that game by 1 point, 36-35, and you know that has to still be sticking with them, because not only did that mean a loss, it meant not winning the region championship, and it meant not making a trip to eventually the state championship there, as BB Comer wins the region and makes a run to finish runner-up in the Class 2A state championship. So you look at that, this game has a lot on the line for a regular season football game.
Definitely, and it's the lone blemish from Vincent's regular season last year. Just the less than a minute difference and the 1 point difference between them, a perfect season, a region championship, and like you said, because of the seeding differences, it might have even been a deeper playoff run than we saw from Vincent last year. So this game is absolutely massive. Coach Weatherford knows that. The players all know that. This is the one game that they've had circled on their calendar, and they're fired up about it. A lot of people around the state are fired up about it, enough for it to be the AHSA game of the week as well.
Yep.
So if you can't make it out to Sylacauga, make sure that you go and catch it on TV this week, because it's going to be an absolutely incredible game between these two teams. And what we're going to see is just a matchup of talent on both sides. And for Vincent, this is going to be where we figure out, are they going to be a 2A contender this year? Yep. If they can at least keep it close, I think you can make a definite case for them to be in that conversation for a 2A title, which is absolutely crazy to imagine, but an absolute testament to what Lucas Weatherford and this entire Vincent system has gotten to be able to do with this team.
Well, so you look at this game on paper and just these two teams, we saw last year, 1 point game, 36-35. Last year, they were almost identical on paper going into the matchup as well. This year, Vincent scoring 41.3 points per game, giving up 8.3 points per game. BB Comer scoring 39 points per game, so about 2 points less, giving up 8.5 points per game, so almost identical on the defensive side of the football. So what is it? Who's going to be able to make that difference in this game? Who's going to walk away victorious in arguably the biggest game on the schedule for both these teams?
So I think with Vincent, they're going to need to be able to establish the run game to be able to kind of spread out the offense and get to take advantage of some of those big plays. But we have seen that the running game has been able to make big plays on their own through Rakelis Robertson and Kason Fields as well. Fields, we don't know 100% about his health going into this week. Coach Weatherford says he should be ready to go, but just how healthy he is still an open question. So going into a huge game between these two teams, that's going to be a big key for the Vincent Yellow Jackets. But for me, I just obviously look at the defense and how good it's been for Vincent, and I think that their key is just to slow down BB Comer's offense and just give the Vincent offense a chance to get going and get something happening, because I think that if you just give them a little bit of time down at the end where they're in the game and able to go ahead and make that play because they're close enough, I think it's going to happen, because we've seen Vincent be able to do that so far. They obviously haven't been tested enough where they've had to play a good 4-quarter football game, but based off of what we've seen so far this year, I'm not concerned about the offense or the defense's ability to go make plays. They just have to go out and show who they really are this week.
So is that who do you think wins this one ultimately at the end of the night?
My heart wants a Vincent win, but just because of how much it would mean to this program, but my head says BB Comer. I think that Vincent might be just a slight step down from where they were last year, and BB Comer might be a slight step up from where they were last year. So
high on Vincent coming into the season, and you're going to break hearts like that this week. But no, I tend to agree with you from that same standpoint. I think that BB Comer is just a little bit better this year than they were last year. You look at their run game, it's going to be very solid. It's going to be tough for Vincent to stop that, but I do think that that's the benefit for Vincent. Their defense continues to be strong. The question is that offense where it was for Vincent at this time a year ago? And we started to see that be the case the last few weeks, but they're going to have to do it against the toughest team that they're going to face and the toughest defense that they're going to face this season. And I don't think Vincent's quite where they were a year ago at this point, whereas I do think BB Comer is kind of at that point that they were at last year. So with that said, I think it's going to be a great football game. Wouldn't be surprised if either team walks away with the victory, but I think at the end of the day, you look at what BB Comer's been able to do, looking a little bit better. I think that's ultimately the difference. That said, this on paper should be another 1-point game this year, just looking at what the stats show through the first 4 games as both these teams sit at 4-0 ahead of this top 10 battle. So it's going to be a big matchup for both of these. Winner should have the track to winning a region championship, and who knows, maybe a Class 2A state championship this year. That's what could be on the line when these two hit the field on Thursday night. The Thompson Warriors continued to roll last week, now 3-0 overall, 2-0 in region play as they take down Spain Park 55-14 in a dominant effort. All facets of the game working as offense, defense, special teams, all on the same page. And they had a touchdown in all 3 of those phases of the game, which is impressive to think about. Now for the second week in a row, they get another local 7A team in region play as they welcome Chelsea for homecoming on Friday night. And the Chelsea Hornets in their own right entering this matchup with a little bit of confidence. A little bit of a sluggish start to the season, but overall now 2-2, 1-1 in region play in their second year in the 7A classification. Coming off a rivalry win against Oak Mountain is not a bad way to go into a matchup with the #1 team in the state and the 4-time defending 7A state champions. But this week, Andrew, going to be a little bit more difficult of a task if they want to improve to 3-2.
Definitely, but I think the key for Chelsea here is to just use that momentum from a win last week. Chelsea hasn't always had that chance, but to come into these games with a win, but these past couple of years they have, with beating Oak Mountain 2 years in a row. So I think that Chelsea, they're going to come in with a lot of confidence, obviously knowing that they have a tough challenge ahead of them, but I think it's that confidence in that drive that is really going to make it so that Chelsea even believes that they have a chance in this game. But I think for Chelsea, they're going to need to expand beyond just the run game and into the passing game if they want to be able to really compete with these Thompson Warriors and obviously contain every single aspect of the game from Thompson's offense on Chelsea's defense. So it will be a tough task, but ultimately I do think that Thompson's going to win, and really the only thing that's going to be able to stop them right now is, will they get caught looking ahead to a big Thursday night ESPN game against Clay Chalkville next week?
Yeah, I think that's a big key to think about in this matchup. I don't think they will, but it is easy. I mean, we saw, you look at the college level, and something like we just saw with Alabama struggling a little bit. They have those high expectations and come out flat against a team like South Florida. Chelsea, the big key for them, they've got to have some balance. Emerson Russell has done it all so far this season. He's been basically their offense, but we're starting to see a little bit more growth from Carter Dotson. We're starting to see him find Jackson Shuttlesworth a little bit more. That's a huge key. Obviously, the defense is going to have to play well, but it's going to be a tough offense to go out there and play a strong defensive game against. So if you want any chance in this matchup, you've got to have that balance on offense. Emerson Russell able to get some chunk yardage on first down and then come out with quick pass plays that can get you a short yardage gain for another first down. Those kind of things are going to be key. They're small and minute in the grand scheme of it, but those are the things that ultimately make the difference, and you've got to have that balance when you're going up against one of the best defenses in the state. But at the end of the day, this is a Thompson team scoring 40 points per game, giving up just 10 points per game. And on the other end of that, Chelsea's giving up 32.3 and scoring just 23.5. So that's a big leap to take against the best team in the state. I do think that this team's going to battle for that fourth playoff spot, just judging from what we've seen so far in Class 7A Region 3, but Thompson, too good of a football team again this year. I expect them to improve to 4-0, overall 2-0 in region play, and continue to be that favorite here in Class 7A Region 3. As we just mentioned, the Spain Park Jaguars, they fall 55-14 to Vestavia Hills last week, or to Thompson last week, and now they get a road trip to Vestavia Hills. And to me, this is one of the best teams in this region. Talked about it coming into the year. We've seen it play out that way so far as well, that Vestavia really that top two team that's going to battle for the region championship with Thompson. Thompson obviously already won that game between those two teams, but Vestavia challenged them for 3 quarters, and now you're taking on a Spain Park team that is struggling offensively, down their top 2 running backs, down one of their top receivers. So you look at that, Andrew, and going into this matchup, what's the expectation? What's the outcome going to be at the end of the night, and the key for Spain Park if they want to win?
Well, I think there's obviously going to be a big gap just because of what Spain Park doesn't have and what Vestavia Hills does have right now. But I think the 2 key factors in this game are going to be, the first being Spain Park has to believe that they have a chance in this. I think that as long as Vikakis installs within these players, like he always does, that heavyweight mentality that he's always preached of never being out of the fight, I think that Spain Park will always have a puncher's chance in a game like this just because of the team that they are. And I think that the other key is the defense. The defense being able to limit Vestavia Hills will give Spain Park a chance to potentially go out and steal this game. And I think that the way that they do that is they go back and look at the Thompson film from last week of when Thompson played Vestavia Hills a couple of weeks ago, and just seeing how they were able to limit them in their run game and force John Paul Head to make some mistakes. We obviously know this is a very physical Vestavia Hills team. They're very good in both aspects of the game, but I think if they're able to limit limit their impact on the game on offense, I think that Spain Park could go out and be able to show that they have the talent to be able to steal a potential game here.
So does that mean you think they're going to steal this game?
No, I do think that Vestavia Hills will win and win pretty convincingly, but I do think that there is a route for Spain Park to win. It's just a matter of whether they take advantage of that and whether that even comes to fruition as well.
You almost threw me for a loop there for a second, but yeah, I mean this is Vestavia team that they want to be physical. They're going to be more methodical with their offensive approach as well. And you look at that, and if Spain Park's defense comes out and plays well in this game, and that's what they did so well against Hoover, this is a team that can compete and battle and make this game pretty close throughout. So they have a chance there in the second half, but I think just missing too many key pieces offensively right now due to injury, and I think ultimately that's going to put them in a position where their offense isn't going to be able to score enough against a very, very good Vestavia defense that's been dominant so far this season, giving up 9.5 points per game. So you look at that, Spain Park's defense plays well. They can keep it close. They can have a chance. But right now the offense too one-dimensional. It's going to take that bye week next week, get healthy, come back and face that second half of the schedule. That's where I think Spain Park makes their difference and has a chance to compete for that fourth and final playoff spot. But this week I think Vestavia, with John Paul Head, with their defense and their physicality, going to walk away with a win. Tough loss for the Oak Mountain Eagles last week as they fought a rival Chelsea in a 21-13 game, a game that was really tight, physical throughout, but ultimately a few different special teams errors by the Eagles ultimately cost them that game as they miss an extra point and have a field goal blocked and returned for a touchdown as Chelsea walks away with the 8-point win there. So now Oak Mountain kind of reeling early in the season as they look to get some confidence. 0-2 in region play now, and this is a game going on this Friday against Tuscaloosa County. They're going to host the Wildcats there at Hermont Park. That's almost a must-win if this team, knowing what's left on the schedule, if Oak Mountain wants a chance at the playoffs.
Definitely, this is going to be one of their best chances of the win going forward this season, and it's going to be really important for them to establish some confidence going forward this season. They'll have 6A Briarwood next week. This is a very good chance for Oak Mountain to string together a couple of wins and start getting some momentum going into the stretch run of their season. Obviously, last week, a tough, close loss. Tuscaloosa County having some adversity on their own after having a win stripped due to circumstances out of their control. And but what we've really seen so far is that Oak Mountain, obviously, Will Odell is going to be the impact here. If he has a big game, Oak Mountain's always going to be favored to win, and we see the defense playing well as well. Tuscaloosa County has some big play potential, though. We saw that against Kelsey. They were able to punish them just on the air and on the ground for some of the mistakes that they were making throughout that game. And I think that the key here is going to be limiting some of that on Oak Mountain side, giving yourself more of a chance to be able to attack on the offensive end and go out and grab a win. I think it's going to be a very, very close game, and I'm intrigued to see who comes out on top of this.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this one on paper, and both teams lose to Hewitt 42-7. Mm-hmm. So you look at that, and you're like, okay, they're pretty similar. Mm-hmm. But then you look at their matchup against Chelsea. Tuscaloosa County wins that one 42-21. Oak Mountain loses that one 21-13, and then it's kind of like, well, now they're not the same. And so you look at that, and it's just, you don't really know what to expect going into a matchup like this. I do think Tuscaloosa County has a little bit more athleticism, but I think that Oak Mountain can be a little bit more physical in the trenches, especially with Odell, if they're able to get him into some powerful running situations. But at the end of the day, this is more than just what we see in that offensive aspect, so to say. This is an Oak Mountain team, one that scored 21 or less the last three games, but two, their defense has actually played pretty well, giving up 30, 24, and 21 in the 3 games outside of that Hewitt loss. So this is the defense that can play well, and this is the kind of game that they have to play well in. But ultimately, I just don't have much faith in the offense, the Oak Mountain offense, to go out and score enough points to be able to win this football game. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I think it's on the flip side. I have enough confidence in the defense to go ahead and make this a close game where they could potentially have a chance to win. I'm going back and forth on this game, but right now I think that Oak Mountain really has a chance to go out there and go grab this win, so that's who I'm going with, the Oak Mountain Eagles.
Wow, okay. Well, I'm going the opposite direction, but I like the faith there. It's just, I got to see it. I got to see it to believe it. I think this Tuscaloosa County offense has a little bit more possibility for explosive plays, and I think they're going to hit 1 or 2 of those explosive plays that ultimately make the difference. But if Oak Mountain comes out and plays a physical game defensively, they played good enough last week defensively against that Chelsea team to be able to pick up a win. Just couldn't get anything going offensively. So I do think that defense plays well, can keep them in this football game, but that offense is going to have to find ways to make some big-time plays that could match the athleticism that we're going to see from Tuscaloosa County. So 1 Oak Mountain pick, 1 Tuscaloosa County pick. We'll see how that one unfolds at Hermont on Friday night, but sure to be a good one there in Class 7A Region 3. There's an opportunity in this matchup between Calera and Chilton County for both of these teams to pick up their first region win, and they need that. This is a Calera team sitting at 0-4 overall on the season, 0-2 in region play. In Chilton County, they've hit their own stretch of struggles, now 0-2 in region play as well. But Calera last week showed a little bit of growth in a loss to Homewood, 43-21. And it's a team that's shown that a couple of times. Defense struggling a little bit, but the offense almost trying to get there. Is this the week on the road at Chilton County, a team that's struggling right now? Is this the week that Calera takes it to that next step?
I think it's like you said, it needs to be the week, because you look at the schedule going forward, and there just aren't as many chances to pick up a win. This is absolutely crucial for Calera's season if they want any chance going forward. But I think it presents a great opportunity for them to take advantage of that on the flip side, because this is a Chilton County team that's really struggled with some offenses so far. Obviously two very good offenses with Helena and Briarwood, but they haven't had much offensive firepower to back up on their own end as well. So I think this is the week where the defense can kind of start coming together and gaining some momentum, and it gives some room for the offense as well to kind of start clicking. I think one of the big weaknesses that we've seen from Calera so far is they've let their opponents jump out to a big early lead, and while they've been able to recover in the second half, the game is basically over by then. So we saw that again last week against Homewood, where they were able to pick up some touchdowns in the second half. Their highest scoring performance so far, if I'm not mistaken. So I really do believe that Calera is going to be able to really get some momentum going here. I like them in this matchup, and I think that they can really use this to springboard themselves and get some momentum going forward into the key stretch run of their season.
So that a Calera pick for you?
It's a Calera pick.
Wow, okay. Another big, bold prediction there. I'm not sure how bold, because both these teams struggling right now, but I mean, I could see it going either way too. Specifically what you mentioned though, the slow starts for Calera have been what's dug them into a hole that they can't get out of. If they want any chance in this game against a Chilton County team that's struggling on both sides of the ball, you got to come out and set the tone physically early in this game. And I think that starts defensively. You've got to come out and set a physical tone on the defensive side of the football, because right now this is a Calera defense giving up 48.3 points per game. That's almost 20 points per game more than what Chilton County's giving up so far this season. And when you've got two offenses that are struggling at this point, then that's a big gap there defensively. And if that's going to be what makes the difference, ultimately I think it is. I think that's what does make the difference when you've got a 19 point per game gap on the defensive side. I think that's just too much for Calera to make up on the defensive side. That said, if they can come out and set the tone early in this game defensively, they're going to have a chance in this matchup to make some plays offensively in the second half. But at the end of the day, I think it's just going to be too much of a gap to overcome there on the defensive side of the football for Calera. I expect Chilton County on their home field to play strong defensively and walk away with the win. We've hit the fourth week of the season. The Montevallo Bulldogs finally going to have their first home game of the 2023 high school football season. So a big opportunity for them as they've gone on the road. They're sitting at 3-0 now overall, 2-0 in region play, Andrew. This is a Montevallo team that's got to be confident coming into their home opener, going to have that extra boost, and they're going to need it in a game against West Blocton this week, a game they lost 7-6 last year. So you look at what they've done so far on the road this season. Now they get their home opener. Is this a Montevallo team, from what we've seen so far, is this a team that's going to improve to 4-0 on Friday night?
I really think so, and that's just because of the grit that they've shown in the first 3 weeks of the season to go out and get those road wins. Obviously, it's not something that Coach Bourne was very concerned about, as he told me at the beginning of the season that it didn't really matter home or away, that he knew his team was going to show up. And he proved that right through the first three weeks of the season. But now going into the home opener, it's a crucial game against a bogey team in West Blocton that, while they're a little far apart on paper, the last 3 encounters have been decided by 1 point each of the last 3 years, and it's proven to be a great matchup. And this year, it could potentially be that as well. We've seen in the past, you can expect the unexpected in this matchup, but I think from here, the one thing that you can't expect is West Blocton to bring out their defense. But I think on the flip side, Montevallo is going to have a much stronger offense than they brought into this game last year that ended up being a 7-6 game. So I think that if they're able to take advantage of those big plays early, get a big explosive play down the field, and then just make West Blocton go out and make a play on their own end, I think that could be a good recipe for success. And because of that, I think that the Bulldogs just have enough playmaking power on both the running side and on the passing side to just go out and make a win here in their home opener.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the explosive talent and possibilities that Montevallo bring to the table on the offensive side is ultimately what can make the difference in this football game. You mentioned the one-score game last year. Look at West Blocton this year coming in to this game off a 1-point win against Sipsey Valley last week, 28-27. So this is a team, lost, but another 1-point game. This is a team that's likes to play those close defensive games. I expect that's what they're going to try to turn this one into as well. But at the end of the day, this is a Montevallo team that's just gained a lot of confidence on the offensive side of the football, playing well defensively so far this season as well. But you look at what they've started to do offensively. Rosario Conwell has come in, really taken advantage of his time at the running back position. And then you look at Braxton King, who's getting better and better and better each week of the season. I think he's a huge key in a game like this with wideouts like Javon Rogers, who can make some big explosive plays. I think seeing that offense score 33 and 42 points the last 2 weeks started a little bit slow, but then they really just they flip a switch and it's automatic at that point. I think this week they start fast. I think the defense plays well, and I think that's going to lead Montevallo to a win, 4-0 overall, 3-0 in region play. That's going to be a solid start, and you start to think, can this team compete for a region championship? So a big opportunity for Montevallo as they host West Blocton in their home opener. Now we break down the AISA and the ACSC, and we've got some more big games taking place this week. And you look at these three teams, Andrew, and Cornerstone, Coosa Valley, and Evangel, and all of them have some more confidence to build off of following last week's play. So this week you got Cornerstone hosting North River. Cornerstone sitting at 4-0 for the first time since 2009. Coosa Valley hosting Banks. It's the Coosa Valley team that's struggled so far this season, but they get a little bit of offensive momentum for the first time of the year last week. And then Evangel just been dominant each and every week. They're going to host Lighthouse this week. So you look at all three of these matchups, Andrew, what are you focusing on? Who's going to come out the winner? Is all three, I believe, sitting at home this week? I
think for Cornerstone, it's just to absolutely maximize the momentum and to minimize any hangover effects from last week's big emotional overtime win over Springwood, avenging last year's semifinal loss and repeating what they were able to do in the regular season of just winning a good, close game against a very good Springwood team. Zeke Adams absolutely exploding in that game and just really proving overall that Cornerstone is a lot more than Zeke Adams, too. They got Keaton Keith, they got Noah Schobert as well. This is a very loaded Cornerstone team, and one that I now believe is going to be really expected to contend for the state championship down here. For those reasons, I think that Cornerstone is going to come out victorious against North River Christian. And similarly on Coosa Valley's side, they have some momentum coming in after a great fourth quarter last week against Pickens. They really struggled out of the gate against the Pirates last week, but they were really able to start stringing together some drives, get some rushing touchdowns on the board, and Connor Moore really settling into his own as quarterback for the Rebels as well. Obviously, it's going to be a bit of a challenge against this Banks team this week, so I'm picking Banks to win this game, but if Coosa Valley is able to start stringing together some more scoring and get some more momentum going, they're entering a very winnable stretch of their schedule, and they could potentially get in the win column before the season is out. And as for Evangel, you could not get a bigger matchup than this. We said last week was a big matchup for them and their national title hopes. This one is even bigger, with Lighthouse coming in as the number 3 team, 8-man nationally this season. Evangel obviously being number 1 after their really strong, explosive start to the season. So this is going to be really the game where we figure out whether Evangel is going to be favorites for the national championship. And we've seen them come out strong against Lighthouse each of the last few years. I expect the same, and I expect Evangel to continue going on the clip that they have been. Maybe not as big of a win as they have been used to so far this season, but I do think that Evangel will win, and they'll win pretty convincingly as they continue to set themselves on the course for another national championship.
I think that that's the most intriguing of the 3 matchups. You look at Evangel sitting at 6-0. This is a Lighthouse team that's playing really, really good football. as well. But Evangel, they just continue to do it on both sides, and that's what impresses me most. They've scored 50 or more in 4 straight games. Defense has given up 20 or less in every game this season in their 6 games so far. I think that Evangel's balance on both sides of the ball going to be very key. I think they're going to walk away with another big win here, and a big rivalry matchup looming for them, so they can't get caught looking ahead to that. But at the end of the day, I think Evangel going to be the better of the 2 teams as they host Lighthouse. As for Cornerstone, this is a team that, like you said, they're kind of cementing themselves as one of the favorites to win the 8-man title down there in the AISA, coming off that huge win against Springwood. Now they get a 1-2 North River Christian team off back-to-back losses of 32-14 and 36-14. This is a Cornerstone team that's good defensively, but they're also really, really good offensively, and they're going to score a lot of points there in that one. Coosa Valley gets some confidence last week on the offensive side of the football, finally get some points on the board, but they're giving up 51.8 points per game, going up against an offense in Banks, sitting at 3-1 overall, but an offense that's scoring 38.8 points per game. I think it's going to be too tough for Coosa Valley to stop Banks in that game. I expect Banks to walk away with the win. So going to be a busy night there across the AISA and ACSC for us. All 3 teams hosting this Friday night. We'll see who can come out victorious in those big matchups. Now we jump into our SCR Stars of the Week segment, and Andrew, to me, this was, I think, the biggest week that we've had, and it was really tough to narrow down your 2 stars, my 2 stars, after a big week of region play because of the consistency that we saw across the board. It wasn't just a lot of good performance, it was a lot of great performances this past Friday night, and I expect that to continue throughout the season. But we'll start with you, your 2 stars of the week from a big week of region play last week.
Right, and my first star of the week is going to go to a player who I saw come into his own before my very eyes on Friday night, and that's Josh Thompson, quarterback of Briarwood. I mentioned in the open how he really started gaining his confidence as a starter with this game. We saw him start making those steps against Chilton County the week before, but it's against a great Pelham defense that he was really able to just take advantage of both his legs and his arms to make some big plays for Briarwood and really have them starting to look like a more complete offense than maybe what we expected going into this season. It's a Briarwood team that, as we all know, it just continues reloading on talent year after year, and this year it's absolutely no different. And that's why Josh Thompson is my first star of the week for Briarwood. And my second star of the week goes to Rosario Conwell, running back out of Montevallo. Just an absolutely phenomenal performance from him on the ground. 168 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns off just 13 carries. That's nearly a touchdown every 4 carries, and it's been absolutely phenomenal to see him come into his own alongside this explosive passing attack from Montevallo. Some great rushing performances across the board, but Conwell gets my star of the week for his performance for Montevallo.
That may be an understatement as far as the balance that we saw at the running back position this past week, which I love. I love good old school physical football, running the football heavily in the trenches, and we saw that last week. And one of my stars of the week, going to build off of that, and that's Jordan Washington at Helena. He just continues to be that running back that can make big time plays and explosive plays. 17 carries, 183 yards, and 2 touchdowns in that big game last week. And you just look at him continue to get better and better, and the balance that they have on that offensive side there, it's going to bode well for Helena moving forward. But my second star of this week going to go to a Shelby County defender. And if you can't score points offensively, what do you need to do? You need to score points on defense, and Eli Holloman did just that at the linebacker position for Shelby County this past week. You look at what he was able to do, had a pick 6, a scoop and score. That's 2 touchdowns right there in Shelby County's win this past week, and he also had 9 tackles on the defensive side of the football. So for a young playmaker like Eli Holloman, that's something that can build this team's confidence, knowing that they have a player who can make game-changing plays like that on the defensive side of the football. Pretty much led them to the win in that game, and that's something that this team's going to have to build off of moving forward. So definitely deserving for Eli Holloman, Josh Thompson, Rosario Conwell, and Jordan Washington, our 4 total stars of the week between the 2 of us. But there's a lot of guys that we got to mention in our honorable mention portion as well, and we start with the Thompson Warriors and several guys who stepped up and will continue the trend. 2 running backs in AJ Green and Michael Dujon. Both those guys had big-time performances. Green with 7 carries, 103 yards, and a touchdown. Dujon 97 yards and 1 touchdown as well. So those two guys equaling up to 200 yards rushing and a couple of touchdowns. So big time performances from them running the football against Spain Park in that 55-14 win. And then for Deuce Oliver, he was one of the ones who scored in more than one fashion. He gets a receiving touchdown of 30+ yards, had 60 total receiving yards and a touchdown, also had a punt return for a touchdown, and put on some shifty moves there in both of those scoring plays for the Warriors, adding a different dynamic there for Thompson in that win. As for Emerson Russell at Chelsea, we've talked about it continuously, week after week. He's probably going to be mentioned every week. Expect him to be mentioned again next week. As far as this week, similar to what we saw with some of the other running backs, 156 yards and 2 touchdowns. To me, he's why they won that game against Oak Mountain, a guy that can just take over a football game and make big-time plays when you need him to, and he did just that last week for the Chelsea Hornets. And Hunter Hill, another one of those guys, just like Emerson Russell, that we just continue to mention week after week. He had 102 yards and 1 touchdown on just 3 receptions in that game. So Hunter Hill continuing to play well at the receiver position. And one area that I was excited to see another receiver step up, and that was Briarwood. Sawyer Click coming together, putting together an 8 reception, 94 yards, 1 touchdown performance there for Briarwood. That's something they've been missing the last several years, that this is a team that's improved defensively, which is what we've seen so far, and is a team that has a quarterback who can get the ball to a receiver and continues to build that relationship. That makes them very dynamic and a difficult out for anybody. So Sawyer Click going to have to continue to do that, and hopefully this is a week that builds his confidence. And we're going to see this guy here on Friday night, Clayton Maines, another guy that we mention quite often on the show. 256 yards, 3 touchdowns on 18 of 28 passing. He's a guy that can do it with his legs, he can do it with his arm, and it's going to be a tall task for Helena to be able to guard Clayton Maines on Friday night. And they're also going to have to be keeping an eye out for CJ Tolbert, who had 5 catches for 171 yards and 2 touchdowns at the receiver position. You saw that game, and just the offensive success that both those teams had against very good defense. The score didn't add up to what we saw there from the stats there between those two teams. But Chelsea, another kid to mention, Anderson Brooks, who honestly won them the game, in my opinion, with his blocked kick that ended up being a 10-point swing right before the half. If Oak Mountain gets that field goal, they get 3 points. Instead, it's blocked and returned to the house and a touchdown. And so you get a 10-point swing that ultimately makes the difference in that game. So a big block kick there from Anderson Brooks. And 3 more players to mention. We start at Shelby County with Bradley Horton, 100 yards on 19 carries, a guy who is good to see back in that role of really toting the rock there for Shelby County's offense. So a big night for him, for the Wildcats. And then at Vincent, Rykellis Robertson continuing to impress at the running back position, 182 yards, 3 touchdowns on 12 carries. Beyond that, freshman quarterback Lane Mims steps in for Cason Fields. He threw for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns, ran for an additional 21 yards. As a young freshman at a 2A school, that's an impressive thing to be able to do. That his future's bright, and that bodes well for Vincent moving forward as well. So I wasn't lying when I'm out of breath. Wasn't lying when I said that we had a lot of guys who really stepped up and played lights out this past Friday night. And you look at that Briarwood Pelham game, the amount of talent that was in that one. I expect similar things out here between Pelham and Helena this Friday night. I have a feeling next week could be just as exhausting of a list and stat-wise when we break down our next SCR Stars of the week. That takes us to the end of this week's show. One of the guys I wanted to mention from our SCR Stars of the Week segment is Zeke Adams, who was just a freak of nature this past week. 6 total touchdowns, 3 rushing, 3 passing, 244 rushing yards, 202 passing yards, so more than almost 500 total yards of offense. So I wanted to make sure to give him a shout out there at Cornerstone as they pick up that big win against Springwood. But Andrew, that brings us to the end of this week's show, and you know it's going to be a busy Friday night. Obviously, we've got this game behind us. What are you looking forward to this week as a whole? Because we've also got that big game Thursday night. So what is it that you're focused on this week?
I think it's both of those 2 games of the week that we have this week in Vincent B.B. Comer and Helena Pelham. But for Helena and Pelham, I'm just looking forward to the rivalry aspect of this. It's like you mentioned earlier, this is one of the best rivalries in the state, and that's all because of the emotion and intensity that these two teams bring to the field. And it's going to be absolutely phenomenal to watch the talent mixed with the rivalry aspect on this field come Friday night.
Yeah, it's going to be so much fun, and we were talking about it off camera with a few people earlier. I mean, this is a game we've been looking forward to since the summer, since last year. It's just one of those kind of games. I'm excited to see how this one unfolds between Helena and Pelham, and it's just part of a big night across Shelby County and going to continue to be that way for the next several weeks. And it's an important week for all of these teams because you get a break from region play after this week, and you don't want to go into that either bye week or that non-region matchup losing any confidence and then having to wait another week before you get back into region play. So a big week for a lot of these teams as they look to build that confidence. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how it unfolds. 2 games of the week, doesn't get much better than that. Thursday night football, Friday night football, best time of the year. Can't wait to see what happens this week. That's going to do it for this week's Shelby County High School Football Show. Thank you all for tuning in.